Hello and welcome, friends, to another Let's Talk UNRWA episode. I'm Mara Cronenfeld. I'm the Executive Director of UNRWA USA and your host for this hour. And 2023, as everyone knows, has already seen a string of several tragic events that have shaken our community and those around the world, and including, of course, most seriously, the devastating earthquake that hit Syria and Turkey last week. We are all mourning the immense loss of life, and that count, of course, keeps growing. And we know that many are trapped under the rubble. It's impossible to really fathom the depth and breadth of this disaster. And we offer our sincerest thoughts and concern to all those affected. A quick refresher on our program. Let's Talk UNRWA is a monthly speaker series that's live streamed on all of our social media channels. Just thinking about challenges. And our goal is to provide everyone listening, all of our viewers, an inside look into the work of UNRWA. And of course, UNRWA is the United Nations Relief and Works Agency for Palestine refugees in the Near East. This is really a unique opportunity for all of our viewers to hear directly from the staff of UNRWA who are working on the ground in the field, and also sometimes the staff who are working in the United States. This is our second episode of the year, but we encourage all of you to check out our long list of past episodes at our website, which is unrwausa.org. That's UNRWAUSA.org. We've covered myriad topics and really have made an effort to bring a well-rounded perspective about UNRWA and all of the work that the agency does with refugees on the ground to all of you. As everyone knows, the massive earthquake that struck Syria and Turkey on February 6th has left so many thousands, tens of thousands of people, including Palestine refugees, in dire need of assistance. Palestine refugees, families and children have been killed, and many families are stuck under the rubble of collapsed buildings. And we also know that several of UNRWA's shelters of UNRWA of Palestine refugee families have also been damaged. Today, we are so lucky to have Director of UNRWA Affairs in Syria, Amanya Michael Ebye, to give us a real-time update on what he is seeing on the ground in Syria and all the work that UNRWA is doing. I know that for many of us listening in the United States, the relief efforts that are getting to Syria are less in the news. We hear a lot that's going to Turkey, and particularly that northern region of Syria, where the earthquake hit. We're just not as clear as we are in Turkey about which relief organizations are working there and how they're able to work. And we're so pleased today that that Amanya will be able to shed light on that. And I also want to say, Amanya, before we start, that Syria has a very important place in my heart. I spent 2 very formative years there from 2001 to 2003, living in Damascus, but of course traveling all over the country, and have many Syrian friends to this day. And I also was just particularly close to Palestinians there, living in Yarmouk and other settings, and seeing the footage of families and of victims and of people being pulled from the rubble alive has been an emotional experience, and one that has really kind of underlines our need, and my personal need, and our need as an organization to really appeal to Americans to provide as much support as they can for those suffering both in Syria and in Turkey. So Amanya, thank you so much for your time and for being with us today, and thank you so much for your service. I'm not sure if you've had very much sleep probably over the last week or so. Before we get into actually what's happening on the ground, we'd love for you to tell us a little bit about yourself, your professional background, and what led you to join UNRWA in 2017, I understand.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you very much, Maran, and thank you for this opportunity for me to share with you my story, but also the experience of the Palestine refugees in Syria. My name is Amanya Michael Ebye. I'm a Ugandan national. I joined UNRWA in 2017 as Deputy Director for Programs, in charge of day-to-day operations of the agency. Later, I was promoted to Director in 2019. Previous to that, I'd worked in many other countries. I worked in DR Congo, leading the operation there for 6 years. One of the biggest IRC. At that time, I worked for the International Rescue Committee, one of the biggest international organizations. Previous to that, I'd worked in Jordan, overseeing the program in Jordan, Syria, Iraq, Lebanon, and Palestine with Iraqi refugees at the time. I've also worked in Darfur, Sudan. I headed the Darfur operation, one of the biggest, before being assigned to Jordan. I then also worked in Uganda, my native country. Prior to that, I'd worked in Tanzania. But my first international assignment was when I was assigned to Rwanda 30 years ago in response to the genocide. So we were among the first people who came in after the genocide to provide assistance to those who had survived and help the country rebuild. And that was quite a very challenging and emotional period. My own, I've always been thinking, how did I end up here? In 2008, the IRC asked me to give a keynote address when Secretary General of the late Kofi Annan was being recognized at the Freedom Award dinner of IRC in the world of Astoria. And as I prepared my remarks, I realized that my own life may have made me get attracted to what I have been doing for a few years. I grew up in a turbulent Uganda. When I was young, just a very few years, there was a coup d'etat. And for the first 9 years of my life, we were under a very brutal dictatorship under Idi Amin. My uncle was killed during that time. Then a few years later, there was another wave of violence and fighting. My father was killed during that time. And in both times, we were always running away, being displaced internally in Uganda. And I think what I still live with is the generosity of people as we run around from our houses, the loss that we suffered, and how many people, including relatives, but even non-relatives, helped us. And maybe this is why, through all the professional options I had always looked at, would have most likely ended me in the same place, trying to provide support and assistance to those who have been affected by circumstances like this. I think that's my background, my life story, and my professional background as a social worker, and having done a master's in social sector planning, have all led me to here.
Wow, what a life story, and what an immense breadth of experience across many regions, and a number of regions in the world, many countries. It sounds like you have a wealth of experience. You should, and just given your motivation and your personal story, you should write a book, a memoir about this. I would love to read that. And also, as I said before we started recording and going live, that, you know, just as a human being, I thank you for your efforts, for all of your efforts in all the different countries you've worked. And particularly right now, just the relief efforts that I know you and your staff are engaged in every day since this earthquake struck and the aftershocks have struck. And so I want to thank you. I know that all of our community of UNRWA USA supporters thanks you. And I can tell you that the funds that we've been able to raise are a measure of how much this disaster has affected those in the United States. So just alf shukr, 1,000 thanks to you, Amanya, to the UNRWA USA team, and to all those working to provide relief over the last harrowing week. And maybe let's just jump in. Just maybe, I think everyone's eager to know what is the situation on the ground. Maybe you can tell us first in northern Syria, how many have been affected, and what kind of relief efforts have been underway over the last week, and where we are today. Just a general synopsis of the post-disaster setting.
Mm-hmm. So thank you very much, and on behalf of the Palestine refugees in Syria and in UNRWA in general, I would like to sincerely thank the supporters, the donors, those who have been generous, those who have made it possible for us to continue serving Palestine refugees with dignity, and even being able to respond so quickly when the disaster, this earthquake hit. Now, numbers continue rising, but on the territory of Syria, the Minister of Health has confirmed that about 1,400 Syrians have died so far, including Palestine refugees. From our own camps alone, 9 refugees died, and I think this is a big loss. But I'm so saddened, very sad about an incident where 2 little girls, when the earthquake struck, they would run out of their house, probably doing the right thing. Unfortunately, when they went outside, the bricks from the building collapsed and they were killed on the spot. Another child was injured and died later in hospital. And many harrowing and very saddening stories like these are repeated in many places. We also, on the territory of Syria, know that about 2,400 people have been injured, and the suffering is immense across the area which has been affected. In the case of UNRWA, what was affected is the northern part of the country, where we have 2 camps in Aleppo. One camp is called Neirab camp, another one is called Handarat or Ainetar, and another camp in the central part of the country called Hama was also affected, and another camp called Latakia, which is on the Mediterranean Sea coast in Latakia, was affected. In terms of our response, immediately after the earthquake struck, the very next day, and because of the UNRWA has staff living in the refugee camp, so our staff, having survived, just as the community, woke up and started planning as usual for 12 years. In all these crises, our staff are always the first ones to step up on the ground, and they continue.
Yes. Oh, sorry, the connection is a little slow. Let's let it catch up, and just repeat that sentence, starting with many of the employees of UNRWA, of course, are refugees themselves. Start there again. We lost you a little bit.
Sorry about that. This is the internet in this country sometimes. Most of the refugees, 90% of our staff, refugees themselves. They live in these camps. UNRWA operates in 12 refugee camps across the country, and 4 of the camps of 12 were affected during this crisis. And as I have said, about 9 Palestine refugees are confirmed dead from camps, and many others were injured. In terms of the impact of the earthquake on refugees themselves, about 500 refugees have had houses damaged or destroyed, and we have UNRWA 13 installations that were also damaged. However, immediately after the earthquake, our staff took to the ground. They started conducting assessments In Aleppo, we started providing assistance from our own stocks to those who had been affected. In Latakia, 800 refugees whose houses were significantly affected came to our school and wanted shelter. We opened up the school, started providing them with food, started providing with clean water and sanitation, and also across the region, working around the clock to support with blanket, mattresses, mats, and heating for the locations that have been affected.
I'm
Yes.
so sorry. This is so key. I want our viewers to understand. And the connection got a little bit, again, it got a little bit garbled. Let's think, is there anything you can do on your side? Or is this just the nature of the internet in Damascus right now? Tell us. It's coming in a little bit garbled.
Let me call for instance.
And thank you all who are listening for your patience. Of course, we cannot control the internet as much as we want to. Let's see if Amanya can get some help.
Hello?
Yeah, can you please quit it? We have connection problems, please.
Okay.
The internet keeps starting. Can you please?
Great. And Amanya, yeah, I did hear a little bit what you said in terms of the relief, but I really want, it's so key for all of those tuning in to really understand what exactly what UNRWA has been engaged in terms of relief, particularly because we are so lucky and that we're so proud and feel so lucky with our community of supporters, and we have seen them come out in force in terms of support, of providing support for this disaster, and many of our wonderful community have provided funds that we've already been able to send to UNRWA, and we have tens of thousands of more dollars that we'll be sending to you shortly. So I think it's so key that our community of supporters really understands the work that UNRWA is able to do with those resources. So I think it's worth kind of slowing down for a second to make sure we get your connection up to speed. Are you getting some help, Amanya?
Yes, help is on the way. I apologize for this. I think there's probably a connection internet down maybe across the country.
Okay.
But they will bring like an additional guide, our IT, so that they can connect maybe.
We can't, I can hear parts of what you're saying, but yes. Okay. So help is on the way. And actually while we're waiting, I just think it's really important that anyone listening can contribute if they're so moved. We would be so grateful. Additional resources are of course needed. You can go to UNRWA's website, UNRWA USA's website, that is, if you're in the United States. Again, UNRWA-USA.org, and you can press donate, and you will be able to contribute to relief efforts, UNRWA's relief efforts on the ground in Syria. So, and actually, particularly, you can click on urgent, bring earthquake relief to Palestine refugees. Of course, your support is crucial to help UNRWA continue to provide its essential resources. Once again, visit UNRWAUSA.org to support UNRWA's work on the ground in Syria. So we'll hold on a little bit, Amanya, for you to get support. And you think this is you were saying sometimes it's a nationwide issue?
Yes, sometimes because this we have many challenges, including electricity. It could be that power has gone off and the master problem. That could be the problem. It could be within our own building. I'm sorry about that, but I can, if you hear me, I can try again to talk about the assistance we are providing. Is that okay?
Yes, you're coming in clear right now. Let's go for it. Please go ahead.
So immediately after the earthquake, the following day, our staff who live within refugee camps started conducting assessments and providing assistance to those who wanted. In the where the struck, about 60,000 refugees live in the camps, in the 4 camps and gatherings. So we had to immediately provide those who are directly affected. We had to provide them with mattresses, mats. In one of the camps, about 800 refugees came to our school for their safety. Their houses had been cracked, and we opened the school, started providing them with food, started providing them with water, providing them with counseling. Things within as a result of that is anxiety, the fear that all had. Everybody thought there would be another earthquake. There were many tremors. So our staff were the first responders, and we really owe it to them. And we've been able to provide assistance to the refugees more than 10 days. And now we have submitted a proposal, appeal for $2.7 million. $2.7 million help us provide cash assistance to help with rent for about 500 families who have had their houses destroyed or damaged. It would also help us to support about 100 families who are living in shelters. This money would also help us with rehabilitation of the refugees. It would also help us provide psychosocial support, especially to children who are living with extreme anxiety. It would also help us to providing support to those living in the collective shelters. So the $2.7 million appealing for, and we have, thank you, we've received some money from the US. We are appealing for more. I hope this appeal that I'm making on behalf of the refugees will help us mobilize more resources, because at the beginning of the response, we used the little stock we had in-house. In fact, moving some items from Damascus to Aleppo to respond and provide shelter and assistance to those who had been immediately affected. But our stocks are now running out. The needs are increasing. The needs are remaining. I should also say that really, I don't know what happened. Immediately, the day following the earthquake, the temperature in the region dipped. In fact, the following day, we got snow in Damascus for the first time this year. And the temperatures in northern Syria and even southern Turkey went below 0. And we had to respond very quickly to get blankets, mattresses, mats, heating into the shelters, heating to the families. We've now distributed food, some of the ready-to-eat food, but also the one they can cook for those who have remained at home. We are conducting assessments on the integrity of the houses, and that's how we've come up with about 500 houses of the refugees affected at different levels. Our own installations, schools, clinics, 13 of them have been affected, and in some cases we've evacuated them. We will need to conduct repairs for these installations so that we continue providing services in dignity to the refugees.
Thank you so much, Amanya. And you started to come in very clearly at the end. The connection is very clear right now. So I just want to say very quickly in the beginning, because it was a little bit difficult to understand for everyone listening, that there are some 60,000 refugees in the affected areas, which are four camps or gatherings, and UNRWA stepped in right away with shelter for 800 folks, 800 Palestinian refugees after the immediate earthquake. UNRWA schools are always open as shelters for all of those in need, and that you've been providing food and water in the immediate aftermath. And then, of course, we heard from you about the appeal, the emergency appeal, which is $2.7 million to provide ongoing support, housing relief for those who lost their shelters or their shelters are inhabitable, and of course ongoing food supplies for those who cannot access food easily, and then psychosocial support, which is essential for those, all of those, but particularly the young children, the kids who've been traumatized by both the earthquake and the ongoing aftershocks. So let me, while we have the connection very clear, let me ask you a couple more questions. So we understand that UNRWA's, of course, mission is first and foremost to provide assistance, life-saving assistance to Palestine refugees in Syria. However, of course, given the gravity of the crisis on the ground and understanding that there are not there are limitations to what international aid agencies can do right now. What are the ways UNRWA is serving the larger Syrian population? And we understand that UNRWA shelters, as I said, are available for all those in need. What about food, non-food items, hygiene packs, etc.? If you can tell us about how UNRWA is supporting the community at large.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, thank you very much, Mara. In Syria, the government does not discriminate between Syrians and Palestinians. They treat them as one people, and that's the approach we've also continued to use. But of course, we work together with other UN agencies and international non-government organizations in what we call the humanitarian country team, which is coordinated by the resident humanitarian coordinator in this country.
Sorry, so the humanitarian country team, and state that again. It's
under the coordination of the resident coordinator and humanitarian coordinator for Syria. Immediately after the earthquake, we met and agreed the way to conduct assessments. For example, in Latakia, the government has about 170 collective shelters. Palestine refugees and Syrians are welcome. In Aleppo, I understand about 57 collective shelters. Both Syrians and Palestinians are welcome in those shelters. What we are doing is to try and help people in need, not necessarily separating whether they are Palestinian or Syrians. All of them are welcome. Like the Palestinians are welcome into the collective shelters that are run by the government. Where we don't necessarily directly support collective shelter, we're handing over blankets, mattresses, mats to help those in those shelters. And so that's as much as we're doing in terms of coordinating. Now, different UN agencies, including UNRWA, World Food Program, UNICEF, UNFPA, are working together with us to provide support to different sections of the population, women, children, looking at shelter at large, and also serving the larger population that was affected, which is the Syrians.
Okay, great. So, and just to repeat, for in case it's hard to hear, that UNRWA is working directly with those on the ground, particularly the UN agencies, UNHCR, World Food Program, UNICEF, and working hand in hand with the populations, of course, that each agency is primarily responsible for, and that the Syrian government, of course, makes no distinction between Palestinians or Syrians. So it really the aid is meant to go to anyone in need. And UNRWA itself has been providing shelter, and I assume that means also meals and non-food items, kits to both Palestine refugees and Syrians who are in need. And of course, we all thank you for all of this relief support at a critical time. And if I may, can you tell us, are there any other international organizations working in northern Syria, kind of non-UN entities? Have INGOs been able to get into the region?
Thank you very much. Maybe just to clarify that predominantly within the camps where we work, 100% the residents are Palestine refugees. However, in collective shelters where people moved, in collective shelters, I'm sorry, I can see the internet is unstable. In collective shelters where refugees, where people moved, where Palestinians and Syrians, we serve them equally. The biggest funding that we receive and the way we use most of it, nearly 90% goes to Palestine refugees. Okay. Just to clarify, because that's our mandate. Other UN agencies are also supporting other sections of the population according to their mandate. Now, as part of the humanitarian country team, we bring together UN agencies, international organizations, non-governmental organizations, the local NGOs, ICRC, and others. And as you know, access to the northern part of the country in some cases has been a challenge. You have organizations working out of Gaziantep, providing support to northern Syria. And recently, there was one crossing which was approved by the Security Council, but the president has allowed another 2 crossings. And indeed, assistance has started to from the UN and also with INGOs and NGOs on the ground has started to reach the affected areas that are in that and the government-controlled areas. It was initially slow time. Assistance now is reaching that part of the country as well. And we have many international organizations and non-government NGOs, local ones, working in that area, also supported by the United Nations.
Okay, great. And again, it was a little cut up, so I'll just repeat and make sure I got it right, Amanya. So there are now 3 crossings open in northern Syria, I guess from Turkey into northern Syria. Now 3 crossings open. There was one open the whole time, and then the Syrian government has allowed 2 more crossings open recently. And there are now many aid agencies on the ground working to support relief efforts in the government-controlled territory in northern Syria. Is that right, Amanya?
That's correct, Mara. Correct.
Okay, great. And have you? So it sounds like there are many organizations on the ground actually ready and able to provide relief. What are the limitations right now? Are those aid agencies, including, of course, first and foremost, UNRWA? Are you getting the resources you need? What are the main issues you're facing? Is it financial? Is it actually being able to access the resources that will help people? Is it getting to the affected territory or to the affected areas? Please tell us kind of the major challenges you're facing.
So initially it was the scale of the disaster and ability to respond. In many cases, regrettably, on the territory of Syria, sanctions have meant that some equipment is not available or was not imported. Now, when we got access and we were able, on the Syria territory, we were able to start providing assistance, we were using initially our own resources. So one of the biggest constraints we currently have is that we just launched an appeal for funding. Funding has not yet I think the percentage is still so low that has come in, limiting our ability to respond. We have capacity on the ground. We have, like UNRWA has 4,000 staff in the country, we are able to respond, but funding is a challenge. In some cases, as I just said, as the UN together, we've been appealing that better access be given to areas that were not accessible, that the sanction regime is relaxed to allow Syria to import and money and funding to come through, so that we're able to provide faster assistance and response to those communities that are affected. But on the ground, we have capacity, we have the numbers. What we are appealing for in order to serve the families and the communities that are affected is funding, is access, is also the review of sanctions themselves. And I think lastly is the partnership with people like the US population who are advocating with their governments, with their communities to support agencies like UNRWA and others that are responding and supporting those who are affected around.
Okay. So again, that was cut up, but let me try to summarize, because I think this is essential. So what is needed on the ground? You're saying right now that you have staff that is ready and able to engage immediately, and they have already, of course, been, but thousands of UNRWA staff who can provide the support that's needed. And what's missing right now are three main things: funding, access, making sure that there's ways to get in to the affected regions, which I understand now there are more crossings, but any more access is better. And then also a review and lightening of sanctions that have been prohibiting certain equipment or materials that would be helpful, of course, in ongoing relief efforts. Is that correct, Amanya? Did I hear you correctly? On those are the three main things that you're in need of right now?
Yes, indeed. On the territory of Syria, the UN, we have better access. The government has provided a blanket approval for us to move very easily and also move supplies. But I'm more as well as a humanitarian concerned about those who are caught up in that area where the additional crossings were opened. We appeal as well that more access to that population is also granted so that they are also served.
Very clear, very clear. Thank you so much. And so just let me take this moment again to appeal to all of our generous supporters who've already contributed so much, but just to say we are sending every penny we can to UNRWA in Syria right now. We've been already able, thanks to your generosity, to send $50,000. Thank you so much. And we are getting ready to send at least twice that shortly, and the more funds that we're able to collect, we can send and provide you, Amanya, with some of those $2.7 million that you need. We at UNRWA USA want to do as much as we can to support. So our listeners, please head over, if you're so moved, to UNRWA USA's website, UNRWAUSA.org, and click on Urgent, Bring Earthquake Relief to Palestine Refugees. Of course, your support today, as Amanya said, is crucial to help UNRWA continue providing essential resources to Palestine refugees in need and others on the ground. And of course, 90% of the work that Amanya's team does on the ground per UNRWA's mandate is for Palestine refugees, but they do not turn away those in need, including all the Syrians who've been affected. So, Amanya, I'm going to back up a little bit just for some additional context here. Even previous to the earthquake, we understand the situation has been tenuous. We've seen reports that stated that, the Syrian crisis over the many years has already had an effect where 40% of UNRWA's classrooms have been affected. 25% of its health centers, and just also given the Syrian crisis, it's affected Palestine refugees to the point that we understand 82% of the Palestine refugee population is facing absolute poverty, which means they are living off of less than $2 a day. We know UNRWA already has limited resources. Did the earthquake put an additional strain on UNRWA's ability to carry out its daily services in Syria? You had mentioned the the 60,000 or so who are affected in the northern region, but we also know that across Syria, if I'm right, there's some 430, 450,000 refugees that you're serving. Maybe you can tell us just the top challenges that UNRWA is facing serving Palestine refugees right now and after the earthquake.
Thank you very much, Mara. We have, before the war, there were 560,000 registered Palestine refugees in the country. After the war, we remain with 438,000 refugees in the country. Most of them are Damascus and rural Damascus. Of those who remain in Syria, initially 60% of them were internally displaced, meaning as a result of the war, they had lost their houses. Fortunately, the number has reduced from 60 to 40 as UNRWA has been able to rehabilitate some of the camps and people have been able to return. But 40%, nearly half the population that remains in Syria are not living in their houses. They remain internally displaced. Now, we also, 3 of our refugee camps were completely damaged. One of them is in Aleppo, which I have talked about, called Handarat or Ainetar. Another one is in Damascus, which used to be the biggest camp with 160,000 residents, called Yarmouk, which was about 30% of the refugees in the country, and another camp in the south called Dara. Other camps were damaged, including Sbene, Hanishi, and Husseiniya. But in 2018, we were able to renovate installations, and that's how people returned, and the number of internally displaced reduced from 60% to 40%. However, right now, we have been able to renovate our installations in Dara. However, Yarmouk remains largely not rehabilitated. We've launched an appeal. We used to have 23 installations or facilities there. They are all damaged. 160,000 residents who used to live there. Currently, we only have about 4,000 who have returned to rubble. They are living in rubble. They came back not because it's a good choice. They came back because they don't have any other choice. They'd rather live in a house without windows and doors rather than pay rent, which is also increasing. So they've come back desperately. Just as an example, in May, we were transporting 200 young children, students, to school. In September, it increased to 600. So, and also in Aleppo. So across the country, yes, 82% of the refugees living below the poverty line. In fact, the number at sometimes has increased up to 90%. Now, when we add our assistance, that comes down to 74%. However, the challenge that UNRWA has continued to face is that our funding is not always, the funding requests are not met. For example, the funding that we need to provide cash assistance, food, and to repair our installations, last year we only got 40% of what we asked, 40%. For us on the front line, I've been here for 6 years. I have seen it get from bad to worse. In fact, when I came in 2017, I had worked in many other conflicts. I was extremely shocked at what I found. At the time, I did not have even words to explain what I was seeing. Right now, I just don't know how the refugees continue to survive. I mean, living on less than $2 a day, the Syrian pound has been devalued. The prices of some commodities have gone up more than 7 times. The income of most of the refugees remains more or less the same. We are only able to supplement with cash assistance and food, but even that is not coming. When we appeal, we only get 40%. So we are forced to cut significantly that assistance. Now you add the loss of housing, loss of property, then add on the COVID, which followed, add on the collapse of the economy in Lebanon, which also impacted Syria, add on the recent outbreak of cholera, which also affected us, add on many years of the conflict and people running out of their savings and being desperate and increasingly relying on UNRWA. For example, before the war, only 6% of the refugees in Syria were classified as most vulnerable. Right now, the percentage has gone up to nearly 90%. I tell you, it's quite shocking. I see things that are so hurting that sometimes I'm not even able to describe them. But I think, Mara, what is very important also to say is that the Palestine refugees are very resilient. They are very resilient. They are not giving up, or they are not giving in. And every day, our staff and the refugees, at a very small opportunity for celebration, they celebrate. But I must say that the aspect is a crisis of a crisis. I mean, over the last 6 years I've been here, every year we get something that makes the situation of the refugees worse. And I just did not believe that after all that we've gone through, even the economy now suffering, that you'd have an earthquake. This is completely about to break out the population's back. But still, the refugees woke up, they were helping each other. There were those who were not significantly affected, were helping. The staff started to help. All they are asking us, the international community, is please hold our hand so that we continue standing. They continue standing, because right now, what they are standing on continues to be eroded. But I'm so proud of our staff. I'm so proud of the refugees for their resilience. I'm so proud of the students. Last year, 95% of our grade 9 students passed. And
Wow.
I went to school, and there was a big dancing ceremony. I think people just wanted just one opportunity to be happy, to celebrate, because everything is quite a challenge. I went to a graduation in December for our vocational training students. We were having about 300 of them graduate, most of them girls in that session, and really happy to say 86% of our students get jobs in the first year of graduation. So the training that UNRWA gives is quite high quality, and it's recognized. However, the ceremony had to be delayed for 2 hours when the students just burst into dance, debke, and all that.
The best delay ever.
Yes, and some of us, myself, I was taken around and we're dancing. It is just an opportunity to celebrate. And even you can see, we have posted pictures of even the students right now in the collective shelters. Our social workers are providing support, but the children are still painting their faces. They're still laughing. The parents are still supporting them. It is just that ability of the Palestine refugees, the Syrians, to continue standing, to continue resilient, that keeps us going. And all we are asking, those of us on the ground have been here 6 years. I'm not yet about to give up. Every day I wake up, there is a very good reason why we should go to work, we should serve. We are only asking our partners in the US, our partners across the world, to come to our call, our assistance, so that we continue to serve this very population that deserves our support and deserves dignity.
Wow, it's as if somebody was listening, because that last part came in crystal clear, no internet issues, and it was so powerful, Amanya. And I can picture the debke, having been, living and among Palestine refugees in Yarmouk, and I've seen that joy myself. And also, I'm just in my mind having spent so much time in Yarmouk, thinking about this thriving, I mean, it was a camp, but really it was a little city, a big city actually, of 130,000 people, reduced to, you said, a couple of thousand, and people living among the rubble. It actually physically hurts my heart to hear that, having spent so much formative time there, with I hope some of my dear friends who are listening now, who I'm still close to. So your words move me deeply, and also with so many crises around the world, somehow the crises affecting Syria and that kind of abject poverty and the conditions in which Palestinian refugees who've already been displaced as refugees, and then to be internally displaced within Syria, and then to face COVID, and now cholera, which I didn't know about, and now the earthquake, and of course the long war. It is just impossible even for us to fathom. So I really call on our listeners here, and I will tell you that UNRWA USA will continue to do what we can to support Syria. It is dear in our hearts. And again, I'll call on any of those who are willing to provide some light for these young people and these families. Please go to our website, unrwausa.org, and click on Provide Relief to support earthquake relief in Syria. We would be so grateful. And I tell you, Amanya, we're going to raise more funds for Syria. And again, as you said, not just for this immediate earthquake relief, but to help ameliorate the conditions of so many suffering with the world stage not really necessarily, or suffering with the world not necessarily aware of the depths of that suffering. So you have helped educate us, Amanya, and I'm so grateful. And I just want to say, how can I was going to ask you what the most rewarding part of your job, but you kind of said is seeing the joy and the resilience of people you serve. Is there anything else you want to tell us that makes that has kept you there 7 years and makes this work so fulfilling for you?
Indeed, we are on the front line. And we are motivated. I am motivated. My team is motivated by the solidarity we have with the refugees. They are not giving up. They want us together with them. 90% of our staff are from the refugee community themselves. This is one very important factor that keeps us going, me and my team in this country. The other one are the moments of joy and celebration of the huge achievements. I would say, for example, in May last year, we helped 193 vulnerable persons with a contribution of for each family a maximum of $3,000 to renovate their houses, put windows, doors, some little, and they entered. You could have seen the joy in the Dara camp, and really motivated by this, we have expanded and appealing for funding to renovate an additional 50 houses in that camp, 100 in Ainetar camp, which was damaged, and looking at providing hope, joy, and smiles on the face of the refugees. And they are very, very, they receive all this with gratitude. They are extremely pleased. When I walk into a school and the children, the way they receive us as UNRWA, the way they make their performances, the way they invite us to celebrate with them, their successes. There are many, many good moments in my job. In the 6 years I've been here, it's not always miserable. And it's the refugees, it's the staff that make it happen. I'm not from this country. I tell you, I feel so welcome. I feel at home. And the Syrians and Palestinians here, they make me so feel at home. Sometimes I forget I'm not from here. It's so home, and all of us internationals who serve here feel the same way. The government is very welcoming. Yeah. So all these things. Sorry.
No, continue, please continue.
All these things really make us want to wake up the next day and serve, and we can really see the difference we are making in people's lives. Unlike many other agencies, UNRWA is a direct service provider. So in Syria, we have 102 schools, 50,000 children go to the schools. They go with smiles every day. They go home with smiles every day. At the end of the year, 95% of them pass with flying colors. What else do I ask? We have our health facilities working to control disease and treat and refer. We also were the ones who were providing COVID vaccination for the whole international community in Syria. You know, what else would you ask? We have a vocational institute that is supporting more than 1,500 students, and you get business community 400. Offering 400 jobs to our students at graduation, and telling us that the training we provide is the best. And at a graduation, you have a celebration of 2 hours, them dancing. What more should I ask? And you have all these communities very pleased with our work, very colorful schools, very, very motivated students. I think in many ways, some of us are lucky to be here. Yeah, we're lucky to be part of this.
Wow. It is such fulfilling work. And I'm so glad, wasn't able to interrupt, because your words are so powerful and bring me joy. And all I wanted to say was that, having lived in Syria 2 years, that warmth, that hospitality is like none other. And that goes for the Palestine refugees, Palestinians in Syria, and Syrians. I was treated the same way you're describing, and I was at home. I was welcomed into people's homes. Just walking down the street, people would invite me into their homes. And it was such a powerful feeling that really, frankly, changed kind of what I thought about humanity and about, community. And so I know exactly the feeling you're describing. And I know how hard your work is, and that of your whole staff, and that of all the Palestine refugees on your team. I know it's fulfilling, but I also know it's hard. And we just, as a person, I thank you. And I hope I've had a chance to visit some of the field sites. I do hope to go back to Syria, Amanya, and see you in person, and thank all of your staff in person, and bring the support of the American people to you. So again, Amanya, thank you for sharing all the latest updates, for educating us on the important work that UNRWA is doing for Palestine refugees amidst a natural disaster, yes, but also, as you've described just now, over the many years, in terms of health services, education services, shelter services. And on behalf of our entire UNRWA USA team, we appreciate so much the time you've taken today to educate our listeners, and really educate our listeners about a part of the world that just doesn't get enough coverage in the news. So you've done a service to those in the US, and I only hope that many people can tune in and hear your words, and hear how you describe the situation on the ground, both the challenges and also the very, very many rewards. And on this note, I'd like to remind all those watching to keep your eye on Palestine, Syria, Turkey, and its refugees, and to continue showing your solidarity for Palestine refugees by supporting organizations like UNRWA USA, and of course, supporting all of those organizations providing earthquake relief on the ground. You can make a one-time donation. You can also become a monthly solidarity sustainer, or we also very much appreciate anyone who can advocate for the continuation of UNRWA's funding and UNRWA's work by contacting your members of Congress. Please visit our website, unrwausa.org, again, to learn more. And also, this is a reminder to follow us on social media at UNRWA USA to stay up to date with our latest. Thank you again, Amanya. I'm so glad your most powerful words came in clear with the internet working perfectly. Thanks to all who tuned in, and inshallah, I'll see you in person in the coming years, if not months. I would love to be able to visit you and the Palestine refugees in the near future.
Thank you, Mara. Thank you. Looking forward to seeing you and to the support of the American people to Palestine refugees in Syria and in the region.
Thank you.
It has been my deepest pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.